A worn-out hoodie, a quiet showroom, and a truth that brought everything to a standstill. No one suspected the man in old sneakers and faded jeans owned the entire dealership, but within the hour he would challenge their assumptions and remind them that real worth isn't worn, it's lived. Let's dive into this story, but before we begin, leave me a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to follow for more. A silver Grab SUV rolled quietly into the back lot of Thompson Elite Motors, a luxury car dealership just on the edge of downtown Charleston, South Carolina. The late afternoon sun poured down in golden waves, heating the pavement to a shimmer. The thick southern heat clung to the air, and the row of high-end vehicles, sleek coupes, bold performance SUVs, sat in the sunlight like jewels behind glass. Malik Thompson remained seated for a moment, one hand resting lightly on the steering wheel. His eyes lifted toward the front of the building. Shimmering chrome logo, spotless floor-to-ceiling windows, and he gave a small nod to himself, as if thinking, let's see how they really treat people who walk through those doors. No name tag, no welcome committee. Malik chose a space near the back, where the staff and everyday customers typically parked. He stepped out of the vehicle, tall and calm, dressed in a simple grey hoodie, frayed jeans and scuffed white sneakers. No flashy watch, no designer labels, just a regular man. At least, that's what he looked like. As he approached the entrance, the automatic glass doors opened with a quiet whoosh. A burst of cool air hit him, carrying the familiar scent of new leather, fresh wax, and climate-controlled luxury. Bright LED lights danced off the polished bodies of showroom cars, making each one gleam like it had just rolled off the line. From the front desk, Malik heard soft chatter and laughter between a few employees, but as he stepped in, heads lifted, eyes glanced quickly at his clothes. The energy in the room shifted. Not overtly hostile, just cautious. Dismissive, even. Malik didn't flinch. That subtle tension, that feeling of being quietly sized up, was exactly what he came for. Because today, he wasn't the owner. He was just a man walking into a luxury dealership, with a worn hoodie, a quiet presence, and a story nobody knew yet. Malik had barely stepped inside when a confident, fast-moving woman appeared from the far end of the showroom. Heather Collins, the dealership's longtime sales manager, approached with practiced precision. Her blue-colored blazer was crisp and fitted, her brown hair pulled back into a tight bun, and her heels clicked sharply on the gleaming tile floor with each step. Tucked under her arm was a clipboard, something that seemed almost glued to her hand, a symbol of control and authority. Her eyes swept over Malik in one quick glance, head to toe. A flicker of surprise, then hesitation flashed across her face before she composed herself. A smile formed, but Malik recognized it instantly, the kind of smile that's more about protocol than warmth. "Good afternoon," she said coolly, her tone polite but distant. "Is there something I can help you with?" Malik returned a calm, almost relaxed smile, his hands still in his hoodie pockets. "Just looking around," he replied, his eyes drifting across the showroom like he was taking in an art gallery, not a car lot. Heather's brow arched slightly. "Are you shopping for a vehicle?" The question wasn't just a formality. It carried the weight of quiet doubt. Like she couldn't quite picture a man in a faded grey hoodie and worn sneakers, fitting in with the clientele she was used to. Malik nodded. "Something like that." Heather folded her arms, her stance now a bit more assertive. "Well, just so you know, we cater to clients who've been pre-approved. Most of our vehicles start in the six-figure range. I might be able to suggest some options that are more suitable." Before she could finish, a voice called from the front desk. "Heather, delivery guys here." She turned her head briefly, but her eyes snapped right back to Malik, as if worried he might lay a finger on something expensive. Malik raised an eyebrow, still smiling. "So, you're assuming I'm not qualified to buy a car?" The question, soft but razor-sharp, made Heather pause for just a beat. A flicker of unease crossed her face before she pulled herself together again. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she replied, her smile now a tight line. "These vehicles aren't cheap." Malik didn't move. He stood still, saying nothing for a few seconds. No need to push back. He'd already seen enough. His eyes wandered across the rows of high-end cars, then slowly returned to Heather. This is going to be an interesting day, he thought. Malik remained still, standing beside the sleek silver coupe. His gaze quietly moved over the interior through the tinted glass. He reached out and lightly brushed his fingers across the door handle. Cool metal meeting warm skin. Before he could say a word, Heather returned. Her clipboard was pressed tightly against her chest now like a shield. "Here," she said firmly, stopping a few feet away. "I've put together a few vehicles that might be more appropriate for your situation." Malik tilted his head slightly, his tone still calm, but his eyes carried a quiet depth. "My situation?" Heather didn't waver. She extended a printed sheet filled with vehicle images and specs. At the top, bold letters read, "Pre-known specials, best deals of the season." "They're reliable," she explained, her voice flat and rehearsed. "Fuel efficient, low maintenance, very practical." Malik took the paper and scanned the list without comment. A 4-year-old sedan, a 2017 SUV, a discontinued compact hybrid, modest prices, sensible options. He nodded once, the corner of his mouth lifting, not in amusement but in recognition. One page, and he'd already seen the full picture. "I appreciate the effort," he said evenly. Heather blinked, momentarily disarmed by his steady response. Maybe she'd expected frustration, offense, maybe even indignation. But Malik offered none of those, just calm composure, so even it was almost unreadable. "I'm just trying to be realistic," she added, her voice softening slightly for the first time. "Prestige. Sorry. Thompson Elite Motors. It's not for everyone. I just didn't want to waste your time." Malik looked up. This time, his eyes had changed. There was no hint of a smile, only something deeper, something serious. "And what makes you think I don't belong here?" The question wasn't loud, but it landed like a quiet thunderclap, cutting clean through the assumptions Heather had built her pitch on. She hesitated, blinking rapidly. "I've been doing this a long time," she said. "I can usually tell when someone's out of their depth." Malik nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Interesting," he said softly. "You sure you're not missing something important?" The air between them thickened, as if every sound in the showroom had suddenly fallen silent. Heather stood still, trying to maintain her polished composure, but the subtle shift in her expression betrayed uncertainty. Malik calmly folded the list of used cars and slid it into the pocket of his hoodie. Then he looked up at her. "You said I wasn't really in your target range," he said, voice steady, not a hint of anger. "So why not let me speak to someone who might see things differently? Maybe the owner." Heather raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard by the request. "The owner?" she repeated with a short, awkward laugh that didn't quite mask her irritation. "You think the owner's just going to show up to chat with every walk-in? They're busy people, not the kind who sit around waiting to meet strangers off the street." Malik didn't flinch. A faint smile played on his lips. "Then maybe you could give them a call," he said. "Let them know Malik Thompson is here. I think they'd want to know." Heather's grip tightened around her clipboard. She studied him for a long second, as if trying to figure out whether he was serious or simply delusional. "Sir," she said, her voice strained but polite. "I'm trying to be respectful, but this is becoming a bit much. I have other clients to attend to. If you're serious about purchasing, I can schedule you with one of our sales associates. Otherwise—" She didn't finish the sentence, but her eyes spoke volumes. Malik didn't budge. His calm gaze held hers, not with arrogance, but with a kind of quiet authority that needed no explanation. Then, with deliberate ease, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contact. "I'll make the call myself." Heather squinted slightly, her doubt now fully visible. "What are you doing?" Malik brought the phone to his ear. "Calling the owner," he said simply. "Won't take long." The energy in the showroom shifted. A few employees had begun to take notice. Conversations tapered off. Curiosity hung in the air. Malik turned slightly away and spoke into the phone, loud enough for Heather and half the room to hear. "Hey, it's me. I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine, just a bit of a misunderstanding. Let Raymond know I'm here, would you?" He ended the call, tucked the phone back into his pocket, and turned to face her again. "They'll be here shortly," he said, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. The showroom had fallen into an eerie kind of silence. The usual chatter, laughter, and footsteps had vanished. Now the staff moved quietly, sneaking glances toward Malik and Heather, pretending to stay busy but unable to hide their curiosity. Heather stood upright, her back straight, but her fingers gripped the clipboard so tightly it began to tremble. This wasn't a situation she was used to. A casually dressed man calling the owner directly and saying they'd be arriving soon. That didn't fit into any scenario she'd ever imagined. Then, the soft hiss of the automatic doors opening. The sharp, steady sound of leather-soled shoes echoed across the glossy tile. A tall man in a navy blue suit entered, his expression composed and confident. Raymond Ellis, the regional director. Under the overhead lights, his features were sharply defined. Broad forehead, square jaw, sharp eyes that scanned the room with purpose. And then he smiled. A genuine, respectful smile. "Mr. Thompson," Raymond called out, striding across the showroom toward Malik. "What a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect to see you today, but I'm glad you stopped by." Malik stepped forward and shook Raymond's hand with a calm, easy smile. "Appreciate you getting here so quickly, Raymond." The entire room froze. Heather stood rooted to the spot, her face turned pale as paper, her eyes darted between Raymond and Malik, confusion rapidly giving way to realization. "Mr. Thompson," she whispered, barely audible. Raymond turned to her, his tone shifting to a more formal register. "Yes, Heather, this is Malik Thompson, the new owner of Thompson Elite Motors. It became official last month." Heather stumbled a step backward, nearly dropping her clipboard. She stared at Malik, the same man she had just suggested look at used cars, now revealed as the person who owned the entire dealership. I didn't know," she stammered. "I had no idea you were—" Malik lifted a hand gently, cutting her off. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "It's all right, I understand," he said. "But here's the question. If I wasn't the owner, how would I have been treated in this place?" The silence in the room deepened. Heather couldn't find the words. And at that moment it became clear to everyone in the showroom, this wasn't just a surprise visit, it was a test. And they had failed it. Less than 10 minutes later, every employee at Thompson Elite Motors was seated in the main conference room. A sleek, modern space with glass walls, a polished walnut table, and a large flat screen mounted on the wall. The lighting was soft, just like any other day. But the atmosphere was anything but ordinary. It was heavier, tighter, as if everyone in the room was holding their breath. Malik Thompson stood at the head of the table, both hands resting gently on the smooth wood. His gaze moved slowly from face to face. Some employees looked down. Others tried to hold a neutral expression. Near the end of the table, Heather sat stiffly, silent, her eyes fixed on her clipboard as if it might shield her from what was coming. Raymond Ellis stood quietly near the door, arms folded, his eyes steady and respectful, focused solely on Malik. "Thank you all for joining me on short notice," Malik began, his voice low and warm, but unmistakably firm. "I know this isn't the usual way an owner introduces himself, but today I need everyone's full attention." The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. "My name is Malik Thompson," he continued. "I'm the new owner of this dealership, but this morning I didn't walk through those doors as the owner. I came in as just another customer." He paused for a beat, watching their reactions, and I wasn't impressed with what I experienced. Heather glanced up briefly, her face pale. A few employees swallowed hard. No one dared speak. "I was judged based on appearance," Malik said, his tone still measured, but each word landed with quiet weight. "Not by my actions, not by the questions I asked, just by what I was wearing. A hoodie, worn sneakers, and an unmarked SUV." His eyes drifted toward Heather. Not naming her, but the gesture was enough. Everyone understood. This isn't just about me," Malik said, more slowly now. "It's about anyone who walks through those doors and doesn't fit the picture we've built in our minds of what a real customer should look like." He straightened, his voice rising with quiet resolve. "We sell luxury vehicles, yes, but that doesn't give us the right to devalue people who don't fit our expectations. Starting today, I want Thompson Elite Motors to be a place where everyone is treated with respect, no matter who they are or what they look like." The air in the conference room remained heavy after Malik's words. Most eyes were fixed on the table, a few quiet nods, but no one spoke. Malik let the silence stretch, not to pressure them but to let his message settle. Then he turned his gaze to the far end of the table. "Mrs. Collins," he said gently. His voice wasn't sharp or condemning, just calm, steady, but it drew every eye in the room to a single spot. Heather Collins flinched slightly at the sound of her name. She straightened instinctively, hands clasped so tightly they were turning pale. It took her a moment, but she finally looked up, meeting Malik's eyes for the first time since the truth had been revealed. "Would you like to share anything?" Malik asked. His tone softened, but his expression remained firm. Heather swallowed hard, her lips trembled slightly. Every person in the room was now looking at her, and for the first time in her career, she wasn't the one leading the conversation. She wasn't in control. She was on the other side of the table, and she knew it. She began, voice hoarse, almost a whisper. "I was wrong." She paused, drawing in a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I judged you, I misjudged you, based on how you looked. I shouldn't have done that. It's a habit I didn't even realize had taken root until today." She looked straight at Malik now, her eyes filled with shame, but also something real. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. Truly." Malik gave a slow nod. His face remained composed, but there was a hint of warmth in his eyes. "Thank you for acknowledging that," he said. "I'm not here to shame anyone. But I believe change only happens when we're willing to take responsibility." He began walking slowly around the room, his voice steady as he looked each team member in the eye. "None of us are perfect. We all carry bias, sometimes without realizing it. But here, in this team, we have to do better, because if a customer doesn't feel respected the moment they walk through these doors, then no car, no matter how beautiful or powerful, can make up for that." He stopped, turning his eyes back to Heather. "I believe in second chances, but second chances come with responsibility." Heather nodded, her eyes glassy. "I'll do better," she said softly. "I'll get it right this time." Malik returned to the head of the conference table, his eyes scanning the room once more. Many faces still carried the weight of reflection. A few younger staff members nodded slightly, as if in quiet agreement. Others were still processing the surprise that the man in the simple hoodie just hours ago was, in fact, the owner of the entire showroom. "We're not going to stop at apologies," Malik said, his voice firm but not forceful. "We're going to move forward, with real action." He clasped his hands behind his back, standing tall, his expression focused and intentional. "In the coming weeks, we'll be rolling out a new internal training program," he announced. "It won't just cover product knowledge or sales techniques. It's going to focus on how we view and treat people." He began pacing slowly around the room, his tone steady, calm, like a metronome setting a new rhythm for the team. "Respect has to be the foundation. Not just for the people who walk in wearing designer watches or carrying platinum cards, but for the ones who walk in wearing jeans, without an appointment, without a business card." Some employees began nodding more openly now. Their guarded expressions shifted into thoughtful ones, then into something more sincere. "We don't just sell cars," Malik continued. "We build experiences. And if that experience starts with a judgmental look or a dismissive tone, then no horsepower under the hood can make up for what's already been lost." Near the door, Raymond Ellis gave a small nod of approval, his face showing quiet satisfaction. "The new culture at Thompson Elite Motors," Malik declared, "will be built on respect, fairness, and professionalism. If that doesn't feel like a good fit for you, I understand. But if you stay, I expect you to walk this journey with me." There was a beat of silence, then a ripple of nods, hushed agreement, and a shift in the room's energy. What had started as tension was now giving way to something else, a quiet unity, a shared purpose. Malik allowed a small, genuine smile to appear, for the first time that meeting. "We won't just be a place that sells luxury cars," he said. "We'll be a place where people feel welcome, no matter who they are." As the meeting ended, employees began to rise from their seats, not in the usual rush to get back to work, but with a quiet, thoughtful air. Some exchanged looks, others gave Malik subtle nods of acknowledgement, silent promises that something had shifted. The energy in the room had changed. It was no longer heavy with anxiety, it felt awakened. Heather Collins stood slowly, both hands still holding onto her clipboard, though now it no longer felt like a shield. She waited until most of the room had emptied before walking toward Malik, her heels clicking gently on the polished floor like careful steps across her own mistake. "Mr. Thompson," she said softly, her voice small but sincere, "I wanted to thank you for giving me a chance to make this right." Malik turned to face her. His expression had softened, but his eyes remained steady, the eyes of someone who didn't take words at face value. "I believe in second chances," he replied, "but second chances come with responsibility, and responsibility isn't just something you say." Heather nodded quickly. No excuses, no defense. "I understand," she said. "I know an apology isn't enough. I'll show it, through how I act." Malik studied her for a moment longer, then gave a small, measured nod. "I hope you do." His voice wasn't cold, it wasn't threatening, it was the kind of voice that came from someone who meant every word and expected the same in return. He didn't need promises. He needed to see change. In how she greeted the next customer, in the way she looked at people, in how she led her team from this moment on. Heather gently adjusted her grip on the clipboard, more as a reminder to herself than anything else. "I'll start today," she said. "Not just to fix what happened, but to do better." Malik allowed himself a faint but genuine smile. "Good," he said. "Actions carry more weight than words. Start there." She nodded once more, then stepped back. And for the first time that day, Heather didn't avoid eye contact. She looked him straight in the eye, not with fear or defensiveness, but with a sense of responsibility. Malik stepped out of the conference room just as the late afternoon sunlight began to turn soft and golden, casting long slanted rays through the showroom's glass panels. The light shimmered across the polished cars, coupes, sedans, SUVs, lined up in perfect silence as if they were listening. The energy in the showroom felt different from that morning. The wary glances, the hushed whispers, they were gone. In their place was something lighter, something that felt like the beginning of something new. Raymond Ellis joined him quietly, a small, thoughtful smile on his face. "You handled that situation with real grace," he said. "Not many people could have done what you did today." Malik gave a faint shake of his head, still looking out over the wide, gleaming space. "Sometimes people don't need a lecture," he replied. "Sometimes they just need a mirror held up to see themselves clearly." He exhaled slowly, letting go of the last bit of tension still lingering in his chest. No matter how well prepared he had been, reality always stirred emotions in ways plans couldn't predict. Malik knew this day wouldn't fix everything. But he also knew this: every small, intentional act could plant a seed for something greater. He turned to Raymond, his voice calm and steady. "Next week, I want to start meeting with the teams, group by group. I want to hear from them, understand them, and set clear expectations. If this place is going to be a model for how we do things, it has to start with the people." Raymond nodded. "You're a true leader, Malik." Malik smiled quietly, then turned to take in the entire showroom, his gaze thoughtful, almost reverent. In his mind, he saw Heather owning her mistake, the younger staff committing to do better. He didn't want change out of fear. He wanted change born from understanding the worth of a person, something he himself had nearly been denied because of a hoodie and worn-out shoes. "We don't just sell cars," Malik said to himself, almost a whisper. "We shape how people feel. Every handshake, every smile, every glance leaves a mark." He walked over to a black sedan, gently running his hand across the mirror-like surface of the hood. The day may have begun with doubt and judgment, but he would make sure the days ahead began with something else: respect. The story of Malik Thompson isn't just about a luxury car dealership owner being misunderstood because of how he dressed. It's a mirror reflecting back the quiet habits of a society that too often measures a person's worth by the watch they wear, the car they drive, or the clothes on their back. In everyday life, we make snap judgments without even realizing it. We put people into invisible boxes: wealthy or poor, serious buyer or time-waster, trustworthy or suspicious. And in doing so, we miss the chance to understand, to connect, to grow. Malik didn't come in to prove anything. He came in to observe. And in doing so, he held up a mirror to a team that had grown far too comfortable with its assumptions. He didn't raise his voice or retaliate. He simply asked the one question that forced everyone to reflect: if I weren't the owner, would I still deserve your respect? The lesson here is simple, but profound. A person's true value doesn't lie in what they wear. It lies in how they live and how they treat others. And if we can learn to look with compassion instead of prejudice, to see people through the lens of humanity rather than assumption, then the world we live in becomes a more just, more generous place. One quiet glance, one kind word, and one fair moment at a time. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to my channel. I've poured a lot of time, heart, and soul into creating emotional stories like this one, and your support truly means the world to me. Thank you for joining me on this journey.